Hi, this is Emily Pritt. I'm here with Alex Paradise to talk about 5 stages of killing a bad idea. Alex, that's an interesting title.
Yeah, so I was looking at the 5 stages of grief, and that really kind of, as I was looking at this model for grieving, I was thinking, a lot of companies deal with killing bad ideas in their organization. They have something that's causing them problems, that's just not working the way they want it to, and they really need to figure out how to kill that bad idea and move on to something new. And I saw a lot of parallels between people grieving and overcoming loss and what organizations have to do to kill these bad ideas and get to a new idea and a new system.
All right, so the Kübler-Ross model is what we're talking about with the 5 stages of grief, and it was originally developed and intended for people who are diagnosed with a terminal disease. And over time, we've all learned to adopt this. When grandma passes away, the 5 stages are not linear, so you can go back and forward, and there's no timeline on how long you're in each of these stages, which makes it interesting when we talk about grieving. So, how are we going to apply that to the ideas and things inside the workplace?
So when we think about killing terminal ideas that are killing our business, we have to think about how are we addressing people's emotional concerns. Because a lot of times when you're implementing new ideas, you meet resistance, and that's normal. That's a normal process that people have to overcome. And so just like people have to learn to accept what they can't control in some cases, we as an organization have to deal with that. So there's 5 stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's not a linear thing. It's not like you start off with one and you move to the next, but you encounter these all through that process of killing bad ideas in your company. If you're going to move into and implement new change, you're going to have to kill what was there. You have to get past what they were already doing. And so you've got to address these. Now, the first stage that's kind of in here that most people think about is denial.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one is generally the first stage whenever we address any organizational change. People think we don't need to change. Why do I have to change? What's working is working for me right now. Why do I need to change? And organizations have to think about, how do we stay competitive? How do we meet new and improved and sometimes harder goals every year? Well, we've got to adopt new things. There's got to be something that comes on board. So we have to deal with people denying change. Now, I think the first part of that, if you're willing to address that stage, is to look at how do you get key stakeholders involved. So when we think about this, who's the person that we need to have on our side? When I was implementing a new program on the manufacturing floor, I had to identify who I thought were going to be the most important people for not just getting approval from leadership, right? That's certainly one element, right? Mm-hmm. They're a key stakeholder, but also who it's going to affect, and who are the leaders on the floor, who are the leaders in that process or in that area, because I need to get them on my side as well. So you've got to address that change by getting the right people to support your idea. Mm-hmm. Have the right people first. One other thing that you want to address is, when people at the very beginning, when they need to know why, right? They need to know, why are we doing this? Why is this change important? So you've got to seek out input, because if I just come and tell you this is the way it's going to be, what's your response?
I want to know probably a little bit more what's wrong with what we're already doing.
Yeah, so you're gonna immediately push back. Mm-hmm. But if you seek input, if you say, guys, we need to change, here are the reasons why, and then you seek input from them, what are some things that you guys think could contribute and that could help us meet this goal, then you get that
there's more buy-in that way.
Exactly. So you have to start from that perspective of buy-in. I think most changes in organizations start with one person that has a vision. It's rarely that everybody together collectively solve the problem. So it starts with one person that has a vision, and then he goes about the process of persuading people.
Or she.
Or she, exactly. So having that mindset of, okay, I have to go through this process of persuading people and getting them to recognize that there is an issue and that we need to work together to get past it. So I think that's stage one is getting past that denial that you have a problem.
Right. It's one of the toughest stages because change is just constant, but it's one of the most uncomfortable things that we deal with.
Yeah, because if you're happy where you're at, it's really, it's really uncomfortable to shift. So that's kind of stage one. Now, stage two is anger. And that's, again, it's not linear. It's not like you go from denial to anger, but you encounter these people all the time. There's the grumpy guy, right? You got the grumpy person in your organization. Everybody can picture that.
They are not happy with change.
With anything. They're not happy with anything. And so, addressing the people that are going to be angry about it, it may not be violent outbursts of people throwing punches, hopefully not in your organization, right? But a lot of times you'll face, I think of it as a wall of negativity, right? There's always those people that we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this. And so when you come across those negative people, we have to recognize this stage because anger is a part of the grieving process. You can't just dismiss it. You can't bury it deep down inside. That's not how it works. You have to bring it to the open and you have to address it. Now, a lot of times when we think about anger, it's a emotional release, just like an earthquake, right? It's just the emotions build up, and it's a release. So when you have that more passionate explosion, I won't say actually, again, we're not talking violence in the workplace. Right. We're just talking about people shouting at each other. When you have that more passionate exchange, what you have to recognize is a lot of times those people just want to be heard. They want their concerns to be heard, and that means you have to create opportunities for people to express their concerns and not build up resentment. Because if you allow resentment to build up, that's where you get the entrenched people that won't change no matter what, and two, you get people that are even directly trying to undermine your goal. So you've got to allow them opportunity to share, and you've got to allow opportunity to listen to their feedback.
Yeah, and that begins in both of the stages we've talked about already, because initially, while we're openly collaborating, communicating about the idea, when people are upset, when the outbursts happen, you also have to have the time to listen to them to see, because like you said, the anger is just manifestation of emotions, maybe misplaced on the delivery, but they have legitimate concerns. They're just not able to constructively get those out because maybe it is something they're very passionate about, something that is important to them.
Yeah. And so when we think about this, a lot of times we screw that up, right? We screw up the early stage, and then we've got them now in this really impassioned state.
Yeah. So
I heard an interesting one, which was it's called the server model for. It's basically for dealing with conflict. Okay. Now you were in the service industry, right?
Yeah, I spent over a decade in food service when I was 16. Working in the back of the kitchen, every element up to restaurant management. Got tired of getting home at 2 a.m, so I do know food service quite well.
So you deal with an angry customer, right? Now there's there's a couple things you might do as a server. What might you do for dealing with anger as a server?
Depending on the issue, a lot of times if you have good rapport with your table and you know that they're upset, you can talk to them and explain to them. Sometimes they just don't want excuses, so they want that solution. So putting on the manager hat, a lot of times just seeing the manager, they go, oh, this person's here to solve my problem. A lot of it is just, I think, really identifying what the problem is and how to meet that need. Most of the problems are going to be like, my food's late, my food's overcooked. And it's again, that anger is because there's some need that's not being met. They don't feel like they're being heard.
So feeling like they're being heard is a part of it. But when people blow up, a lot of times anger and emotional reactions are you're not thinking about it. Most people that are yelling at somebody, they're not thinking through everything they're saying. They are reacting.
Absolutely.
And so the server model for conflict resolution was essentially, and this is part of a joke, but it's true, which is you basically ignore their first outburst of them yelling at you, and you say, I'm sorry, can you say that again?
It gives them time to process, rethink.
Exactly, because anytime that someone's yelled at you, they don't feel good about it. Nobody, I mean, you feel a little good because you've released something, but then you realize, I don't,
Oh, wait.
So they're not going to curse you out the second time, probably.
Hopefully not.
They're gonna reduce. And so by having people that have had an outburst take a second and say, I need you to say that again. Now, from a business standpoint, when you're, again, yelling conference room, okay, not the best work environment, but it does happen.
Some people might get louder. Oh, you want me to say that again?
But you might say, look, I actually want to hear that concern. Can
Yeah.
you repeat it for me?
Right.
Because I want to make sure that I get this down. And by giving people an opportunity to take a second, rethink what they've just said, it's going to calm them down because they're trying to actually now put their ideas in a line and format what they were thinking. They had passion, and now they're going back to what did I say? What was it that I was complaining about? What are the things that are actually important to me about this? And it allows them that opportunity to recommunicate. So that, again, when we're addressing things in this is not beating people with facts and logic. All right, we're not trying to overcome our animal brain with facts and logic here. This is about addressing people's emotional state. So again, anger is one of those that we have to address. Now, the next stage is bargaining. And when we think from an organizational level with bargaining, this is a lot like people going, well, okay, can I modify what we already have? Can I keep what I've got, but in this case, it's special just for me. Maybe I can just do it the old way. Now, for us at Taproot, this one we come across, somebody, they're using 5 Whys as a company right now. Well, they recognize, they're past that denial stage. They recognize 5 Whys is bad. And now they're on to bargaining internally because there are people internally go, oh man, I don't know that I need something fancy for everything.
Right. Well, can't we just? And they're familiar with.
I'm familiar with it. I'm comfortable with this. So we'll just use Taproot for the big stuff, the important things. Like there's some level of importance that you can just define as, wow, that's an unimportant incident. We will just do a bad investigation on that. It's so. Again, they're there from the idea of, well, this is what I'm comfortable. I want this for me. Is there a special case? When you come across bargaining, you've got to have a clear understanding of what's important. What are the fundamentals that you can't budge on? Because sometimes in bargaining, you're going to have to compromise, especially in business. You're going to have to go back and look and say, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that this is going to go through? What organizations do I need support from? Well, I may have to compromise on some of the things I want to get that support. So that's where, again, knowing and having a clear picture of what you can budge on and what you can't is clear when it comes into the bargaining stage. Now, a lot of times, again, when we think about this from an emotional standpoint, people that are bargaining, what do they really want?
You've got these two things you're juggling, and so with anything, when you're bargaining, it's this for that.
So I think of the bargaining stage from the grief model as when people are recognizing that they don't have control over it. Denial, like you said, back into the denial, is they still think they have control, right? They still think they have control over it. And bargaining is when they're coming to terms with the idea that they don't have control. So people that are in this bargaining stage are seeking to have some level of control. That may be in things like how you implement. That may be things like your timeline for implementing, or again, special circumstances. So you've got to recognize the people that I'm bargaining with, what is it that they're trying to control? What do they have control over? And which of their concerns are real concerns and which of them are them just trying to influence it in any way they can?
So for someone who's trying to bargain and kind of in this aspect, it would be That's a great idea. Let's start it after the holidays.
Yeah.
So we're putting it off a little bit. So I'm not telling you no, not right now, but it's also kind of, I feel like it's almost like, do I even want to do this?
Yeah, we do this all the time with our New Year's resolutions and other things like that, right? It's like, oh, well, I'll start after Christmas, or I'll start after, I got to start after the cake. I can't start till I've eaten this cake.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And when I'm bargaining, because I actually just want to eat the cake.
Yeah. And so recognizing that it's a bid for control in a lot of cases, there are things that you can say, yeah, we can compromise on, because again, this might be your boss that's trying to bargain, And so you might have to compromise, but there are some things you go, look, there's no reason we should be waiting on this. We have these incidents that are going to happen between now and Christmas, and do we want to not solve those problems effectively? No, we want to solve problems effectively.
Yeah,
so,
this gets us, if you're met with that, just kind of the bargaining aspect, then that can also frustrate you and then put you back into anger. When we're talking about back to that server model, it also depends on, I wasn't in fast food, I was in fine dining. So, dealing with an angry customer in fine dining, at least they had a little bit more control.
Hope anyway.
So there's a lot of moving parts to all of that in your organization, who you're talking to, what you're dealing with, and the emotions.
Yep. So the fourth stage that bargaining leads to, and it doesn't lead to directly, but it's the fourth stage in there, is depression. And when we think about depression in our organizations, you can think about demotivation, obviously, but depression is also people dealing with uncertainty and anxiety. So the idea, when you're introducing something new, people don't always understand their place in the organization, their place in this new system. And that can lead them to being concerned, being distraught even about this idea, which then leads to anger and bargaining.
Vicious cycle.
Absolutely. They're all into all these places. They're back into all those positions. So you've got to think about, how are you going to address people's uncertainty and anxiety? There was a model that, and I'm going to talk about a model inside talking about a model, but there was a model that I learned for organizational change. And the idea was that anytime you introduced a change, there was disruption, orientation, indoctrination, and assimilation. So the idea is, whenever you introduce something new, everybody becomes disoriented, because suddenly you're dealing with something new, you're dealing with something you didn't.
There's a learning curve.
Yeah, there's a learning curve. And so it goes into what they call the valley of depression, right? This disorientation.
Overwhelming.
You become overwhelmed, you become anxious. So by get out of that, you have to orient people. You have to get them set up so they know where they fit in with this new hierarchy, what their expectations are. And having a clear direction and message is what orients people. Only then are you going to be able to indoctrinate them, get them the information they need so that they can start assimilating what they're doing into their work. And so from an organization level, how do you deal with depression? Well, clear direction and high supportive behavior.
Yeah.
And when I mean high supportive behavior, I think about when you're onboarding a new person, somebody who's just brand new to the company. What do? Well, you don't just put them at their desk and say, get to work.
Hope not.
You've put them with an expert. You've got somebody that kind of can guide them along and support when they have questions, when they have concerns. You've got someone there to help answer that. So again, I tie this back to Taproot, because that's what we do, is teach root cause analysis. I think about organizations having an expert in your company that people who are learning this new root cause model can go to is really important. Having someone who can coach, who's been through the 5-day, who understands the system in good detail and can coach people on it, I think that's really critical. To get out of depression, you've got to have that direction, you've got to have that clarity, and you've got to have that high supportive behavior.
Because there's a lot of uncertainty in that stage, whether we're talking about the grief stage of grief or in your bad ideas. The uncertainty is what's kind of fueling that. Yeah. So having that person alongside you, under your wing kind of thing, definitely helps.
And having that high supportive means, because people don't just oh, depression's gone forever, yay.
I wish.
But the idea is, okay, by having high supportive people, by being engaged and being highly supportive and having a plan for that, you're going to catch people before they get deep in the slump, orient them quickly, and they'll be able to get out.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing that we think about when we're thinking about dealing with depression. Now, this wonderfully leads to the last stage, and that is acceptance. Now, again, the model originally came from accepting that you're going to die. But the idea we want here is accepting that this idea is gone and we need to embrace and do what we can to support the new idea. I think there is a misconception when it comes to acceptance that people stay there. They've accepted the idea, they'll never go back. And I think this model was really good because the idea is you come to points of clarity. And you may fall back during change. You may go back into one of these other stages, but you want to get people into those points of clarity and acceptance and support, and turn their support now into an opportunity to build more support in others. Because one of the biggest things, you get those that naysayer we talked about in that second stage of anger, right? You get those really curmudgeon-y, grumpy people. Well, if you've turned somebody that was like that, they become, instead of your biggest, hurdle to get over, now they're your biggest supporter. And they're going to go out, they're going to communicate, they're going to sing its praises. And that's the kind of thing. So, for us, I've seen it a lot of times in our courses. You'll have somebody that comes into the class, and when we ask everybody at the beginning of the class, we say, why are you here? They'll say something like, well, my boss told me to be here, right? Sounds curmudgeon-y to me. And they might be listing off a pedigree. Well, I've had training in this and that and this and that. And they come in with this, this ego and this idea that they're, they've already got the answers and this is a waste of their time. But when you've got really good training, which we do, and you've got a really good process, which we also do, by the end of the class, I have every single time I've got a curmudgeon person, by the end of a class, they're saying, wow, I thought I knew everything in this class. This has blown my mind.
Yeah.
And that's a, it's a credit to us for what we've done to develop our courses and things, but it's also a recognition that we've taken them through that process. And we do this every time we teach, really. We deal with bargaining. We deal with, that learning curve and that depression early on when people go, oh man, I don't know if I can do this and stuff. And that's really just learning, where they go, oh, I thought it was hard, but really now it's clicked in my head and I get it now. And suddenly we get people at the end of this going, man, everybody needs this. This was so good. I'm ready to, that change is, I think, a really important thing to recognize. Now, what you've got to do when you have people that are now your supporters is you have to let them go proselytize. They've got to go out and spread the word. And so that's the kind of thing that we as an organization have to look for, is who is at that stage where they're ready to spread the word and share and do more. And again, as organizations, we want to look at how do we support people and encourage them to grow. And a lot of the ways that organizations can encourage people to grow is once they've mastered or at least come to the acceptance stage, that's an opportunity for them to grow and develop as a member in the organization. So
I have a question then.
Go for it.
All right. So we talked about the 5 stages. We said that they're not linear. What happens when someone gets stuck and we are only able to control ourselves? We can't control what other people do. How would someone who's recognizing someone stuck in one of these help get them out of that? Of course, it's usually the negative connotated stages we're talking about, but if somebody just is so angry, so unhappy, not progressing to the latter stages, what do you do?
Well, I'd never say you're their therapist, So you got to remember, from a business standpoint, you have to set clear boundaries for what you'll accept. And when I think about any of these stages, I'm always soliciting feedback from employees. When I was a manager, that's what you did. You wanted to get their feedback. But there were times when they wanted to keep complaining. And you have to say, look, we're done at this stage. I've heard your concerns. Now, I tend to try to work from the we can'ts to the how coulds. Like I said, you want to change it from we can't do it this. Well, instead of saying we can't, how could we address that problem? So let's say somebody's grouching, they're stuck in this stage, and they're like, we don't have time to do this. This is something we don't have time to do. You say, you're right, scheduling is going to be really hard for this. How could we make some time in our schedule? What could we take off your plate or other people's plate to give us the opportunity to get this done at this timeline? Mm-hmm. And if you can turn them from the I can't to the how could, you now have them, instead of putting all their emotional energy into being negative, they're putting their energy into solving the problem for you.
A lot of it's how you phrase things. If you're dealing with somebody who's maybe a communication manipulator, maybe they don't realize that they're doing it, how you present information where you're saying, I do hear you. I've taken that. I hear that, instead of like flat out, no. A lot of that can go a long way and help transition that person into moving on down the line. That's good.
If you can do some of the linguistic jujitsu to flip it around to the, like I said, to the how could, that's good. Sometimes you'll still never get them because they're just they want to complain at the time. And so as a facilitator or a leader, you've got to recognize when it's time to end that point of the conversation. And again, if an idea is important and if it's worth killing this bad idea for this new idea, then you've got to step up for yourself and say, look, we're not going to solicit more feedback on this. We've heard your concerns. I have them down here. We're going to work on addressing these, but this is the vision forward, and I need you on my team because we need to get this taken care of.
What you said at the beginning about with the stakeholders and leadership. Kind of Jim Collins says, get the right people on the bus.
Yep.
So to get that idea, good, bad, or indifferent, we've got to also have the right people at the beginning to drive it.
Yeah. So getting the stakeholders, dealing with the emotions behind it, turning those I can'ts into how coulds, understanding where you can bargain, where you can compromise, and where you have to stand firm, and then putting in place highly supportive behavior. Those things is how you kill a bad idea and get people to that acceptance stage and support and roll out a new plan.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's also stages of a great idea. And that's why we have Taproot advisors when you're implementing new processes, that you have that guidance along the way.
Yeah, and we've really laid out a pretty good roadmap for implementing root cause analysis in your organization with our book 2, which is our implementation book. And it kind of rotates through. There's 11 things that you need. Management support's the first one. Recognizing the need to change is number 1 on there, because if you don't have that, if you're stuck in denial, you're never going to change. And so I think all of this, as you go through those 5 stages, it's important to make sure you're checking in and being highly supportive with people, but you've got to recognize the need to improve. And hopefully if you're watching this video and webinar, you recognize that need. And if you want to reach out to us from root cause analysis standpoint and recognize the need to change how you're doing root cause analysis, you can reach out to us at taproot.com. There's links below to get to our website, or you can email us at info@taproot and say, I want to understand how to do better root cause analysis, help me out. So if you want, comment below on how you deal with anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance in your organization, or reach out to us and we'll tell you our secrets.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for talking with us today, Alex. If you enjoyed this webinar, we have them every month. So just stay tuned. Go to our website, like Alex said, taproot.com, and we will see you again next time. Thanks for watching and listening.